sharing our stories connects us. Listen and be connected. Join us for the conversation meeting weekly at the intersection of community and culture. Hosted by Mario Nunez and Joe King Carter. And Joe King Carter. I say it like that every week because it just never gets old. Although Joey's getting older by the minute, and so am I. But, with the week that's been, we'll just go ahead and start it this way. Hi, everybody. Welcome back. This is Wednesday. It's noon. If it's Wednesday and it's noon, it's noon. You're listening to WMNF 88.5. I am Mario Nunez alongside my broadcast partner in crime, Joe King Carter. And boy, Joey, have we got a lot to talk about. Hey, pal, how was your week?
Hey, yeah. Wow, what a week.
Yeah.
Huh? Mm-hmm. It's a good day when you look out your window and there isn't a mushroom cloud.
I love that. I love that. Or a mushroom. But the reality is, those that have been listening to us for a hot minute, they probably are accustomed to the dulcet tones of your baritone and my tenor, and this this day I don't sound like myself. Why is that, Joey?
Because you have some kind of infection, cold, sinus.
No. It's not an infection, but it is. Well, I don't know that. I don't think I'm infectious, but it is true that I think the pollen and the saturation of pollen in the atmosphere has just got me going, and I'm taking, over-the-counter stuff. The Mucinex is kind of kicking in, and so if all of a sudden my voice gets it's because it's working. I took a Mucinex before I left the house to dry it all up. But there's also that effect that hair standing up on its end effect.
Well, you sound fine, my friend.
Thank you, brother. Thank you. You would say that. Well, how was your week, Joey? I mean, enough about me. Let's talk about me.
Well, it was excellent. Life is good, and the stress is high out there. And,
yes, it is.
And I just want to say to all of our listeners, folks, relax, try to de-stress, do what you can to make your lives the good lives that you should be living, and be involved in community, folks. This is all going to come down eventually to community and how communities work. That's what's going to happen to us politically. Change comes from the bottom up. So that's my little wisdom for the moment.
I like it, and we'll go with it because you know what? We have to keep reminding ourselves, and it's almost moment by moment, Joey. This is the kind of thing that we've been drinking from this fire hose now for so long that we've kind of gotten immune to this constant barrage of heinous and hideous news that keeps us all off guard. The one thing is, it's like that herd immunity that everybody was trying to get to during COVID times. You do cross over, and then all of a sudden you realize, well, you have the skill to tune some of that nonsense out, and you can stay focused on what it is. All I'm going to say, and then we'll get to our guest because she's waiting patiently for us to stop talking, and I will soon. Joey, how bad must those Epstein files be that you've got to bomb a whole sovereign country of 90 million people that are part of the tapestry of humanity that this beautiful third rock from the sun. I mean, Iran is part of Persia, which has been here for thousands of years, right? So, I mean, Iran. And so we and now, as this orange buffoon always does, we're going to do the reset on this thing, Joey. We're going to do the reset on this thing, and we dropped bombs, and we killed young children in schools, and we've destroyed all kinds of things, and we're going to be just where we were before we dropped the first bomb. I mean, we're not going to. We didn't achieve anything but distract again. So my question to the general
distract and destroy and perform some of the most heinous and hideous crimes one can perform
against humanity.
And also, I think another thing that's happening is many of us who weren't paying attention have gotten a great education on the power of the Straits of Hormuz. Oof. Wow, what a place in the world.
For those of you that couldn't spell it, now can probably find it on the map.
And so,
right? And it looks like it's tiny, like you couldn't even get one boat through there, but it's 20 miles wide.
Yes, and so over 30% of our phosphates and fertilizers for the world is coming through that strait.
Is that going to affect the food supply, Joey?
Well, there are people that are predicting famine.
Because I try to eat 3 times a day. There
will be famine if this continues.
I bet our guest today knows something about this.
And, I don't want to be a doomsayer, but if this... hang on.
I don't want you to be a doomsayer either.
I don't want to be a
doomsayer,
but
juice.
I get it, but if this madman who's driving the bus continues, you could have a future where your Publix is not open. So let that soak in for just a moment where civilization could go. So you know what, folks, we gotta rise up and make this thing change. That was not a call to action. That is a call to community. And
I love that,
there it
Joey.
is.
He skirted that third rail. Because
That's right.
we can get in trouble, Joey. If you have a call to action on here.
No, I'm just saying, pay attention, folks.
Yeah, no, and listen, democracy, as wounded as she may be, is a full-on participatory sport. So you've got to get involved, and the best thing we can do for ourselves and for our neighbors and for our community at large is to stay involved.
There it is.
Because I found this to be the case. When you're feeling blue, when you're feeling down, when you're feeling hopeless, the best thing you can do is be of service to somebody else.
Preach it, brother.
All right. All right, Joey. We did our thing, man.
Yes.
We ate up 11 minutes, way too
And
much time.
we have a couple of spots, don't we?
We do, but let's go ahead and introduce our guest.
Okay.
I promise I'll get to the spots.
Okay,
That's
all right.
my job.
Okay, excellent. Well, I am very excited because today we have with us somebody who is, I think,
knows a few things.
Our listening audience, stick with us, folks. Yep. You're going to find this to be an interesting interview because we are at the Culture and Community Connection, and this is some cultural stuff that's going to blow your way in a significant way. We have with us today, and I'm going to try to do this without butchering it.
No, here it is. Look.
We have. Oh, no, I have it in front of me, but I have with me Dr. Sucheta Cangelao. Is that correct?
Yep.
Oh, I did it right. I'm so
Attaboy,
happy.
Joey. Proud of you.
Yeah. So welcome, Sucheta.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So we don't normally do this, but I'm going to give a little pre-look and let people know that you are a PhD professor at the University of Tampa, that you have this incredible resume of
You want me to read this,
things
Joey?
that are trained. No, let's not read it. Let's let her describe herself.
her?
But
Okay.
I'm just letting people know now
really
that she is
PhD.
got some amazing things happening as a writer, as a teacher, and on a whole series of subjects that are incredibly fascinating. But let's start first with where were you born?
Okay, so is the question where was I born or what is my villain origin story?
I love that.
Oh, see, already.
love that.
You share what you would like to share.
All right, so I was born in 1985 in New Delhi, India, and this was about a decade before laws about female feticide or sex determination testing were passed, right? So when my mother was pregnant, and at that time ultrasounds used to be pretty rudimentary, right?
Yes.
And my parents were very excited to be having a child, and they went for an ultrasound appointment where they could have found out the sex of the child. It's basically illegal now in India to find out the sex of the child before they're born. And, they looked at the ultrasound, and the ultrasound tech has been dubbed since then by my family as the oily guy. And oily guy looks at my father and says, well, do you want to know what you're having? And he looks really sad. And my father is like, no, we want it to be a surprise. We're just excited. And then he turns around and says, Jankar bhi kya hoga, which is in Hindi. It won't even matter if you find out. And my father goes, it's a girl, right?
Oh, my
and
God.
That is
Wow.
before I came into the world. And then I was
Astonishing.
born in Delhi.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so your parents obviously did love their daughters.
Daughters. Yes.
How many siblings do you have?
I have a sibling who is also a PhD. She is a professor of anthropology at Bard. She has a much better job than I do in the sense that she works on food anthropology and she researches food bloggers online and how they create culture. So she actually gets really good lunch before
Wow.
she interviews people. I work more with books.
So she's like an academic version of a foodie.
She's an academic version of a foodie. She
Yeah.
managed to find a way to make this into a career.
That's a beautiful gig. That's a beautiful gig.
So you grew up in the township of?
I grew up in New Delhi,
Yes.
right, so which is a part of the capital city of Delhi
Yes.
in India. And Delhi is an interesting place. It's about, right now has a population of 22 million people. And when I was born in the 80s, things were kind of different. And now the city looks completely different as well. Because India has since joined the capitalism choo-choo train, right? So we are in that situation. But when I was born, lots of different things were happening which were indicating a shift away from socialism to capitalism. Of course, I was a baby, so I was not aware of that. This I become aware of after I study it.
But you are growing up in a changing society.
I am growing up in a changing society, yes. And interestingly enough, as you can imagine, my father was one of those OG girl dads. But, as an older daughter, I can say a little critically that he was one of those dad feminists. So basically, he was very feminist with me and with what he wanted me to do, but not
so
great.
much with the sister.
Not so great with my mother. Right? So again, as an aspect of yourself, you are very good to your daughter, but your wife is still in some sort of cliched caregiving position.
I see.
But yeah, I grew up with a very interesting father who was, among many other things, a rock musician.
A rock musician.
Let
okay.
that sink in, folks.
Yeah. So whoa, a rock musician in Delhi.
Yeah.
In Delhi.
Yeah. And what was his life like that affected you?
So, first I want you to picture my father. He looks like one of the guys in the band Toto, right? So he has a mullet. He has a handlebar mustache, which he used to meticulously comb with a little comb, right? And he was trained as an engineer, like many Indians are, but harbored a secret desire to be a rock star. Right. He had a baritone tenor voice. He was self-taught in composing, and he used to compose on at that time Casio keyboards or whatever synthesizers he could find. It is the 80s after all. He also played the acoustic guitar. And when he was finishing up university as an engineer, a chemical engineer, I believe, he started writing these 2 rock operas because he was very interested in Andrew Lloyd Webber and he was a big fan. And he's like, why don't we have something in India that is Broadway style? Right? An entirely lyrical play that is sung. So he wrote 2 plays. One was called Operama, of course, opera, and Rama, because Ramayana, which is a major epic in South Asia. Incidentally, that the Ramayana is also going to release as a $500 million movie in November. Right?
Oh, really? Wow.
Because it's a major religious text in India, so it's something like the Odyssey would be. An epic text, but also in India, there's more of a continuing religious tradition which still sort of connects with the text. But my father was like, why not have fun with it and turn it into a rock opera? So the first one was very much like Joseph and his Technicolor Dreamcoat, college production. They went to a whole bunch of colleges in Delhi, recruited students. They obviously did not have money for more than 4 shows. And it was rather delightful. And, actually the Ramayana is quite tragic, but they cut out the tragic parts and it becomes this beautiful love story between a prince and a princess.
How old were you at this time, Sucheta?
I was not born yet.
Oh, okay, prior. This is
prior to my
PS,
birth.
yeah, pre-Sucheta.
This is pre-Sucheta, but it informs my work so much that I think it's an important
set that base.
prehistory. Right?
Yes.
Excellent, yeah.
So my parents essentially staged this production with, cobbled together resources and friends and, all sorts of benevolent people. 4 shows happen at New Delhi of Operama, and then they close because they just can't afford it. It goes very well, right? But then my father says, well, I really like this. And, once you've been on stage, you want to be on stage again. And he starts writing a second rock opera. And conveniently for him, there is a second major epic in India, and I would hesitate to say it's just a Hindu epic because, again, my scholarship shows really how diverse it is. But there is an epic called the Mahabharata, which is actually the subject of my PhD, and now I write books about it, talk about, having daddy issues.
And pronounce that again for us one more time.
Mahabharata.
Mahabharata.
Broadly, it means the Great Bharat. I'm currently writing a paper called Make Bharat Maha Again. Right? Because on one hand, this is a fantastic story and it's very much like the Iliad. It's about a great war fought between the 2 sides of the same family. And it really questions ethics and politics and corruption and, power. And I would say, and this has been my contribution to the scholarship, masculinity, right? And also gender. So my father started writing this second play, which was also a rock opera, and that took much longer because this is very convenient for me, as you can imagine. It is literally the longest text in the world. Its critical edition is 15,000 pages, right?
Wow.
Of course, there are abridged versions, there are oral storytelling versions that people pass down from generation to generation. And, I have found the odd 200-page version for my students to read. So my father starts writing these plays, and somewhere I am born. So essentially, when I was growing up, when I was under 10, I essentially listened to stories from the Ramayana and the Mahabharata from this eccentric musician father who
combed his mustache. Obsessively.
And, was very worried about losing his hair and also had a comb over, speaking of combs. But he had lots of wonderful books. And, Peter Brook's Mahabharata, which is a major version of the Mahabharata that's made by a British playwright. And essentially, I just read books about the Ramayana and the Mahabharata.
And let me interrupt real quick. As the Mahabharata, has that been made into a film? Or are there film versions of that or pieces of it?
There are pieces of it that have been made into a film version, but the story on the whole is so expansive because, again, it begins with ancestors and then it goes into the conflict and then there are essentially 18 books of the Mahabharata, the subparts. And basically books 5 to about 13 are the war. So as I like to explain to my students, it's like her hands were cut off, her legs were cut off, her eyes were plucked out, right? Very, very detailed and horrific descriptions of wars and who got what weapon and which god favored whom, right? So, it has been made into a TV show. And interestingly, that TV show... the most major TV show, which I consider was very influential in the rise of Hindu nationalism in India, which I write about in my work, came out in the 80s. And a version of the Ramayana came out in 1986, again, as a TV show. And I'm growing up and I'm watching these things and I'm reading my father's books and I'm listening to, Uriah Heep and The Who. And
what an upbringing, Joey. Joey, come on now. You know who's in front of us, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's an interesting mix, just the Western and Eastern influences that are twirling together in your life. So
at a young time, at an early influential time.
So you're growing through that and let's go to what happens next.
So what happens next is, again, we grow up and my father finishes this play on the Mahabharata. And the play is now, or rather the rock opera, which is in English, by the way, because my father wrote songs in Hindi, English, and Bangla, which are also languages I speak. And Jaya is completed and he wants to have it staged. So what does he do but moves the whole family on a whim to Mumbai, which is the city of Bollywood, right? And he has found a producer there to stage this. And they had the first staging of Jaya in 1998.
Wow.
Right?
Okay.
You're 14. You're 14, 15.
I'm about 13, right? So I see all of this happen, right? But there's also this, personal undercurrent of tragedy. Because one, the Mahabharata is tragic, like many epics, like many Greek tragedies, right? It is deeply moving. People die, you question your very existence. My father was very, I don't know how else to put it, he was extremely mentally ill. So one of the things that made my father magical and also difficult was that my father had what is now called schizoaffective disorder.
Wow.
So he had bipolar disorder and he had elements of paranoid schizophrenia as well, right? Which is, as you can imagine, a spectacular thing for an artist to have because that's sort of like imagination.
You're always on that. You're always on that.
You're
you see the
always
colors.
on that high.
Yep, you always see those colors.
Right.
And, growing up with that sort of magical...
frenetic
person is... both incredible and incredibly traumatic as well.
Of course.
Because that's also your parent. And, it was a fairly traditional Indian family. So my father is the primary breadwinner, which led to him not working for several years when he moved us to Mumbai to do this play.
On a whim.
On a whim, right? We didn't have any money. And interestingly, he didn't even sign a contract for the play, right? So that he would get
no
paid.
assurances.
No assurances. And in the middle of all this, I have a younger sibling who is, of course, the food anthropologist now. And my mother, who is, again, she's a nice lady, but she is a very timid, very kind, gentle Indian woman.
Under the influence of your father.
Of like a terribly charismatic, but ultimately mentally ill
problematic
and abusive spouse.
Right.
So we get to Bombay, and this show happens, and then my parents slowly start to split up, right?
Ending in permanent separation, divorce.
Yes, and this is also, again, I know that like divorce, the way the divorce is contextualized here, and the way I see divorce, particularly as a gender studies professor, is very different from how people see divorce in India, because it's almost as if divorce is really frowned on. And my parents had an arranged marriage. So if you understand that you're not allowed to choose your partner really, right? And I'm not saying this is the case these days in India, definitely not. But again, it varies.
It was the 80s.
It was the 80s. You are also not allowed to leave this partner, right? So it was extremely difficult for my mother to extricate herself from this marriage. She was also not financially independent. Meanwhile, my father's star is kind of rising, but I mean, it is ultimately theater, right? So it's not Bollywood, which is $1 billion industry. And they have 40 shows of this, of Jaya, which Jaya literally means the victory. It's also a very common Indian name. I am always excited to hear little girls named Jaya because it's, victory.
Victory.
So they do these shows, and after 40 shows or something, my father has a breakdown. So the show gets discontinued.
Wow.
Because again, like, it becomes too difficult to work with. It becomes very challenging for the director, Lilith Dubey, who is a major theater personality, and she's also been an actress. She was in The Best Exotic Marigold Hotel.
Beautiful.
Oh, yes.
Fun movie.
As the mother of Dev Patel. Right?
Oh, okay.
So she's also, she's spent many years working in theater, and she also works in film. So she is, I mean the show came back, or rather we brought it back. She says, I can no longer sustain this, right? And that ends, and, it's a very dark period for my family because we don't have a lot of support. Our extended family refuses to support my mother, and well, there's also no money. Right?
No, the sail on the boat has been ripped down. You're just kind of adrift.
Yeah. And so, what is the status of your mother and your father post breakdown? What is happening there? I mean, their lives are coming apart.
Their lives are coming apart, and of course, we are also troubled by the fact that there is little to no understanding of mental illness in India at that time. As you can imagine, this is 1997, 1998. People are just like, well, your father is stressed out, or well, your father is the family patriarch and you must listen to him. And again, like as a 12, 13, 14-year-old, I'm understanding this is not quite right? So I'm reading books, I'm trying to understand, I'm trying to explain it to people. People are pressuring my parents to stay together. And eventually I told my mother that she should leave him and that I would help her. So I'm 15, right?
Quite the adult thing to do.
I am so tired.
At the moment.
Sometimes I feel like I ran out of steam a long time ago. But so my parents split up and, prolonged divorce, custody battles, etc., which is also very unusual in India because they try to have the couple reconcile. As much as possible. Like you have to go through like a mandatory reconciliation period, counseling, etc. And even the counselor sees that my father is not well. Right? So they split up. And then my parents start living in separate homes, close to each other. And, we sort of move between the homes. And my sister has, I don't want to speak for her, has a different experience with all of this because she's much younger. She's 6 years younger than me. And then when I was 18, my father died by suicide because this is usually the path that the mental illness takes. So I'm in the 12th grade and, 3 months before he dies, my father says to me, please take care of my work. Right? And I was like, where is it? And he says, well, I don't have musical scores because he was a self-taught musician, so he's not written anything down. There are some cassettes of his work, which I still have. And there are 2 scripts, one of Jaya and one of Operama. Right? And he's gone. And then, like my mother, my sister and I sort of cobble a life together. My mother starts working as a nursery school teacher and,
Still in India?
Still in India.
Wow.
And I go to undergrad and, try to become an adult while already having been an adult for a couple of years before that.
Well,
Joey, you had an experience similar to that too, being thrust into early adulthood.
I was just going to say, when I think about my own trauma in childhood and children that have to be adults early in life, I'm always when I start to think that I'm going to weep a little tear for myself, I meet someone who has trauma that's as good or greater or bigger, and it's common throughout the world, of course, and we don't address it enough, I believe, because I think there's something generally traumatic about life anyway. Mm-hmm. But the point is, wow, what a thing for you to go through. So what is happening to you? What is happening to you academically, real quick, as you're going through all this trauma, because you obviously eventually choose the academic life?
Right. Well, this was a blessing because my father, because he was an eccentric genius, we had been focusing on the eccentric part, but he was also very smart.
Right.
And he was extremely politically aware and raised us to be very engaged citizens. I actually did very well at school, which was very surprising to everybody in my high school.
Considering all the distractions.
Yes, yeah.
And, my mother would always be called into school, and I was always the troublemaker. But I always got really good grades, and I discovered that I had something of a talent for writing and reading. Mm-hmm. So I told my father, and this is inexplicable because when I was 16, I made this decision. And my father was still alive at the time. I told my father that I would not study STEM, which is, again, a big breaking of a stereotype for Indians, right? Most of my friends became doctors, engineers. And I said, I'm not going to be happy doing that. I'm going to be a writer, and I'm not going to do what you did, which is he studied engineering and became a writer anyway. So neither of the things really worked. Mm-hmm. And my father, again, in his infinite wisdom, comes to me and he is like, I don't think you should do that. You should go to engineering school. And I was like, you're not seriously saying this to me, right? And I said, I'm not going to listen to you, right? Which, again, I get massively scolded for by my father and everybody else, because you're not really supposed to disobey your father in 1997 in India as a woman.
Right.
Right? But I end up going to study English literature at St. Xavier's College, which is a very cool and hipster sort of college with really good liberal values. Interestingly, it's a Catholic school run by the Society of Jesus, right? But it's one of those schools that's, both raised a lot of people who went into Bollywood, but also a lot of people that went into activism and nonprofits. So I ended up going there, right? And I got a degree in English literature there.
Okay. Yeah. Let's stop right there.
Yeah,
because we have to do a little business.
We got to do a little business as we do at the bottom of the hour. We're just a little bit past the bottom of the hour. Let's do this station ID. When we come back, I'll read up a couple of announcements and we'll get back to this very fascinating conversation.
Hi, I'm Rick Fernandez, and you're listening to The Conversation with Mario Nunez and Joe King Carter on WMNF 88.5 FM in Tampa.
Join us at Wavemakers Live with me, Shelley Reback, your host of Midpoint, on April 8th at the Commodore, with Robert Fiesler, historian and author of the multiple award-winning book, American Scare, Florida's Hidden Cold War on Black and Queer Lives. Robert is a very engaging speaker, and he'll be in conversation with me on Wednesday, April 8th at 7 p.m. at the Commodore. Tickets are $10 in advance, $15 at the door, and you can get your tickets on the event page at WMNF.org. I hope to see you there.
And a friendly reminder, if you were one of the people who got one of the Midpoint, and this is, of course, Shelley Reback's show, just before ours at 10 o'clock on Wednesdays, one of the Midpoint branded whistles as a premium donation in the last fund drive. And if you've got that whistle at home, pay attention. There is a whistle training this Saturday, April 11th, from 3 to 4 at Bayshore Baptist Church, 3111 West Morrison Avenue in Tampa. Learn how to use the whistle and learn how to use whistle codes that have been developed to alert the community when ICE is in the area. And this is important because as we draw closer and closer to election time, we know that there's probably going to be heightened activity where ICE is concerned. So that's something that you want to be aware of. If you are just joining us, Joey, I'm going to do it real fast. If you're just joining us, with us in studio today is Susheta Kanjilal. PhD, and she's tenured. She's a tenured track assistant. Is that right? Tenured track assistant professor of English and writing at the University of Tampa. She was born in New Delhi, India. She received her bachelor's and master's degree in English literature from the University of Mumbai in 2007 and 2009. She is a Felix Scholar at the School of Oriental Studies, University of London from 2009 to 2010, earning another master's degree in comparative literature, Asia and Africa, with an emphasis on modern Hindi literature. She received her PhD in literature from the University of South Florida, go Bulls, in 2017. Her research focus on colonial and post-colonial impact of the big word that she's going to say in a couple of minutes in India. It's Mahabharata. In India, she conducts research in Hindi, Urdu, Bangla, Marathi, and Sanskrit. Sucheta is currently writing a book on that word that I just said, The Basics. The Basics is under the contract with Routledge. That's a publishing house. Sucheta has 14 years. That's no short period of time of graduate teaching experience at universities, including the University of Minnesota, Golden Gophers, where she taught Hindi and Urdu language, and the University of South Florida, where she taught composition and literature. At the University of Tampa, where she currently is an instructor, a professor, Sucheta teaches classes on academic writing, cultural studies, Sanskrit epics, Hinduism, Bollywood, and literature of the British Empire. I've never felt so stupid. I don't mean stupid. I just mean I've never felt like my little liberal arts degree from HCC isn't really doing the job today. Congratulations, first of all, on all your successes. That's quite the profile. And I wanted to get that in there because if people are just joining us and listening to you, they're wondering, why is this woman talking so fast? Well, because we only have an hour. But she has a lot to pour out upon us. Absolutely. So please, Joey, take it from there.
Let's
she hasn't even got to the U.S. yet, Joey.
Yeah, I know. And there's some stuff I really want to get to with you on, which has to do with your approaches to the issues of gender.
That's what's fascinating to me,
and other things like Bollywood, by the way. So let's sort of, he's already run through your kind of resume. Let's talk about you start getting involved. You're at University
of Mumbai, yes.
Of Mumbai, and then you begin to grow. How does that experience transfer and bring you to the United States?
So I sort of, on, again, a whim, applied for a scholarship, which is similar to the Rhodes Scholarship, which is given to about 15 Indians a year out of about 1,500. I don't know what the numbers are now. That gives you a full ride to study for a master's degree at the University of London and Oxford, School of Oriental African Studies, where I was, and also the University of Reading. And I got it. I thought I messed up the interview where 6 academics sit across you and grill you. Now I have become one of those 6 academics. I'm sorry, I have joined the NMV faction.
You're part of the establishment now.
Yeah, I got that scholarship. And again, my family, as you can imagine, was not extremely wealthy because we had had a lot of, what we call peripeteia, right? A reversal of fortune. So it was a really great opportunity. So I ended up in London and I started studying more of... It's so ironic. I studied more about India in London than I did in India. But of course, that's also what colonialism does. A lot of the materials have been taken and the knowledge has been produced.
Interesting.
Right?
Yeah.
So, I was there. After that, the next step is the PhD. So I applied for graduate school. And I got into a couple of programs, University of Washington, Purdue, and the University of Minnesota. And very frankly, graduate student stipends are not much. University of Minnesota paid me the most. So I ended up at the University of Minnesota.
Nice.
And the most is not much.
Yeah, right.
But it was quite a lot for me, honestly.
Right, yeah. And so you earn your doctorate there.
No, so here's what happens there. There, I meet a very
You get very cold, first of all.
It's very cold.
Yes, okay, thank you.
And people keep telling me that I'm going to fall into an icy lake. Please understand
Stay off the frozen
I've never
lakes.
seen snow before because I live in a tropical part of India.
Right.
And 17 days after getting there, I meet my husband, right? Who is, he identifies as Minnesotan, though he was born in White Plains, New York. And this gentleman who is finishing his PhD when I'm starting mine, very convenient time to start a relationship, absolutely not, starts waiting outside my department and says, can I drop you home? And I was like, I don't know. Like, I've seen a lot of American true crime shows. I don't know what he's going to be up to. Is he an ex-murderer? Right?
And he's American.
And he's American,
Yeah.
right? So, well, I started dating him, and it turns out, he is American, and he had a cat who didn't quite like me at that time, but later did. He has had wonderful parents, and has wonderful parents. Hope they are tuning in today. And, we started dating, and I'm doing the PhD, and he's finishing his PhD. And then my advisor, the person who's supposed to guide my PhD, essentially decides to move back to India, right?
Wow.
Which means, how do I finish my PhD? Because I can't work with a scholar of Japanese studies, right? Or Korean studies. So I'm in an Asian studies department. So I make a big leap, and I was like, you know what? This boyfriend, he's moving to Tampa to work at the University of Tampa. So I'm going to marry this guy, and I'm going to move to Florida. And
Where it's more the climate suits my clothes.
Climate suits my clothes. Climate does not suit my hair, but no climate does.
Thank you.
And then I come here, and he starts working at the University of Tampa, and I continue my PhD and complete my PhD at USF.
Ah, okay.
Joey, I have an idea. Maybe we can get, her husband to come in here and do a show with us as well and tell us his story. Because I bet it's fascinating. The intersection of how they met and came to Tampa is
He's
amazing.
a professor of?
So, interesting. He is a professor who's trained in modern Chinese literature, which is how we met. Because my husband, Daniel Dugan, he
Hello,
taught
Daniel.
himself Chinese in school. And he went to Wisconsin for undergrad and University of Minnesota for his PhD. And he works on Chinese literature and philosophy. And now he's currently writing a book about video games and gaming. He wrote a very well-cited article on Minecraft, right? So he does all sorts of very interesting things. But essentially, we like to joke. I'm just bragging now. We speak about 11 languages between us, right? And our child, who is 7, we have a 7-year-old son. He is absolutely tired of us and everything we have to say.
It's exhausting.
It's exhausting.
These are two parents that are just,
like,
how do you get a word in edgewise?
Stop.
Yeah. Well,
What's his name?
His name is Ashoka.
Okay.
Ashoka?
Ashoka. Yeah, he's named after a great emperor. And his name also means he who has no grief in Sanskrit.
Nice. Nice.
Ashoka's going to have an interesting life.
No, he's already having
He's
one.
already having an interesting life.
And how can he be on a track that will do anything but be successful because he's got all of this guidance and 2 academicians that are guiding his path.
And, I find that as I get older, a lot of my friends who I would call more intellectual than I am are usually sort of polymaths in a way. They have this interest. It doesn't surprise me that your husband would be in Minecraft at the same time that he's into Chinese literature. That just sort of makes sense. So you're here and you end up at USF. So let's talk about that briefly, how that happens.
Yeah, so I was in the English department at USF. But again, as we keep joking, even now, I work in an English department, but I essentially teach everything that's not in English and also how it relates to English and how it's translated into English and how it is also impacted by British colonialism, right? And I came to this department and everybody was wonderful. Really, I had a wonderful graduate committee. You have to have 4 people who supervise your PhD and 1 person who is, your PhD advisor. I had a wonderful supportive advisor. Shout out to Gurleen Grewal. She has now retired from USF, who was very kind and made me many cups of chai and encouraged me to write my book on the Mahabharata, or at least the first iteration of the book I'm now writing. And after I finished from USF, I ended up getting a job at the University of Tampa. And I have been there since 2017.
Wow. Okay. Let's talk about gender studies and your interest in all that. Obviously, people can make assumptions based on the fact that you were this female person growing up in a colonialized patriarchy and thinking for yourself. A lot of observations probably came to you early in life. But talk about how you feel about all that and your interest in that and how it affects you today and what you teach in that area.
Right. So again, I am a part of a program at the University of Tampa, which is a minor program, which is usually taken by people who perhaps have degrees in psychology or forensic sciences and, English, of course, on gender, sexuality, women, gender, and sexuality studies. And I teach as a part of the program because, again, I became interested in Indian literature, and then I became interested in how classical literature in India informs the contemporary political environment. And you can't talk about literature without religion, and you can't talk about religion without gender. And you can't talk about gender without history.
Yes.
So I work on sort of a combination of all those things.
Right.
Joey, we need another 4 hours with Sucheta. Because 1 hour is just not going to be. It's just going to. There's going to be so many more questions than we have, than we have answers to right now. I just find this whole conversation fascinating.
Yes.
If anybody in the last 14 minutes of our show would like to just ask a question, I know you guys are out there leaning in and listening to all of this, and it's like drinking from the proverbial fire hose, but in a good way. Call us at 813-239-9663. You can always send us a text, 813-433-0885. Emails are welcome. Jessica will read the email on the air, dj@wmnf.org. I'm going to just sit and listen for the next 14 minutes.
So
ask good questions, Joey.
When you're teaching gender studies, how does that? Tell us a little bit about that.
How does that work? What is that?
Respond?
I bet it's a lively conversation in the
classroom. What are the subjects that you specifically hone in on and that sort of stuff?
So again, when I teach gender studies, I'm not just teaching about gender in South Asia, although I consider myself a scholar of South Asia. I talk about South Asia definitely, but I also talk about the history of feminist thought in Britain and in America. So right now I'm teaching the upper level gender studies class called Women's Gender and Sexuality Studies, Histories and Horizons. So we start all the way back with Mary Wollstonecraft in 1792. And we talk about every kind of, every wave of the feminist movement, the suffragette movement, the second wave movement, the French feminists that talk about body, and we talk about Dworkin and Betty Friedan and all of that. And currently, they are in the portion of the class where we are looking at the horizons. So I'm teaching a very interesting book called Decolonize Drag by Karim Khubchandani, who this year is a professor at Harvard University, usually at Tufts University. And he actually talks about how drag has become so commercialized that it's lost touch with its very important activist roots. And, the ways in which you can make bodies and racialized bodies and gendered and marginalized bodies visible on stage, right? So we've been reading that book, and the next book we'll read is called Enemy Feminisms, which is about how even some people who believe they are feminist may not be sympathetic to all varieties of feminism, such as trans feminism or women of color who are part of the feminist struggle and have a different story.
Yes, right.
Or, aspects of class. So we're going to read that.
I have a question, Joey.
Yeah.
So, and we can blame all of this on RuPaul, by the way. I have a question.
I just talked about RuPaul.
No, I'm saying, when you're saying this, I'm thinking, you know what? We have to blame the current events on what happened about 40 years ago on really and truthfully, Ronald Reagan ushered in this whole period of greed is good, Gordon Gekko, greed is good, Wall Street. But we can also blame it healthily on Robin Leach and Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous, because it was champagne wishes and caviar dreams. Right. I'm just saying. But, Joey and I were both raised by strong and loving and very wonderful women. Joey's mom, my grandmother, and my mother, we both of us have a healthy respect and love for women, their leadership, their kindness, all the things that they have had to do throughout the long stretch of history and continue to do to keep us on the path from destroying ourselves, really and truthfully. We both think that has to do with the fact that women give life and bring life forward, and so they're always protecting it fiercely. But so the question I have wrapped up in this commentary is, when are we going to see women step into their proper leadership roles? And when are men going to finally allow them to do? I mean, we could have had Kamala Harris, y'all.
Not allow.
Well, not allow. But allow is
no, men have to be moved over.
agreed, but
Allowing
they have to allow for that thought to enter their mind. And right now, I don't even think.
Well, you're saying they have to change.
Yeah, yes, that's what I'm saying.
And
but,
it's unlikely that the number one will change.
so that's the question we have to have answered. Professor, you have to answer that question before
yeah,
you
well,
leave
let's
here
do
today.
a little politics. Let's
Come
go
on,
there.
Come on, Professor.
Let's go there. I mean, that's fine. I'm just an immigrant and I'm untenured, but I live my life on the line for you. Well,
Go as far
the
as you wanna go.
The text that I work on, which is the Mahabharata, essentially is a critique of totalitarian governments.
Right.
And it says over and over again. And people in India may disagree with me because they haven't read the version of the Mahabharata that I have, because thanks to colonialism, most Indians don't read in Sanskrit. And we have to go to London to learn how to read in Sanskrit. Shows that, well, men are very emotional and not suited for positions of power. And they can lead the world to an apocalyptic war that requires God to come and fix everything and start everything over again.
Nothing in the current events that is informing that commentary, right? Nothing in the current events?
Right.
Okay.
No. It just seems like it's completely disconnected. But when I was teaching this in the class, and it's sometimes usually my students come to my class because they like me, which is very touching and flattering. But they were like, "We are so scared you're going to teach us Sanskrit," and I was like, "No, we're just going to talk about totalitarian governments." And there, my students are. In 2024, crying after the election, crying with me about the texts,
Right.
crying with everything we have learned about, women trying to argue about ethics, about politics, and being sidelined, which all shows up in the Mahabharata, right?
Right.
But we have learned nothing from history.
Yes,
So history
well.
is repeating itself.
There you go. Yeah.
We continue to pound our heads bloody against that same wall.
Yeah. So I'm seeing that your lens is greatly created by this colonial nature of the culture that you came out of. There's original culture, indigenous culture.
Yes.
And then you have this layer of
Imposed culture.
Everything's being influenced by basically the British.
Right.
And so
And that didn't end until just recently, within the last 20 years.
Yeah,
Correct?
so-
Yeah.
Right.
When the crown finally gave India its proper sovereignty back.
So India becomes independent from the British in 1947, but they were in, as the East India Company sort of encroaching, and the Battle of Plassey happens in 1757. So the British ruled India for about 200 years.
Right.
And the funny thing is, what is now considered Hinduism, that understanding really arises as a result of the British speaking with a lot of native elite thinkers. And of course, that colonial history radically changes Hinduism as well, right? However, people in India who are also not very invested in history are ignorant of this, right? So they want to go back to this ideal pre-colonial past, which simply does not exist, which is why they turn to these epic texts as these repositories of, remember, we used to be great then,
Interesting.
make India great again, right?
Right,
But
right.
it was never India. Right. Prime Minister Modi actually said "Make India Great Again" when he met Mr. Trump. So this slogan is not just something that I'm coming up with.
Yeah.
So there's a similar sort of movement and engagement with like a revisionist history in India as there is here, going back to a past that one never was, and two was never just to most of the people who inhabited that past.
Right. Interesting.
And man's inhumanity to man, Joey. Can we get her to comment on that? There's only a few minutes left. Can we get her to say something about why do we continue to just fight? I get so sad, Sucheta, when I see the news and I see these bombs and I see the things of destruction and I see all the death and the carnage. And it's just so sad because why can't we, I don't want to go all Rodney King on us, but why can't we all just get along? I understand that we have differences political, but why is it always bombs and at the tip of a spear that we resolve these conflicts instead of just seeing the humanity in each other? Why is that?
Because we don't read. And
Right.
we don't
And we
pay
don't
attention.
travel.
I had a
We don't
feeling that
travel.
was going to be the answer
And we
because
don't-
you're talking. You addressed the.
Let her say, Joey, let her
ignorant-
say,
You
let her
addressed
say.
the ignorant of India, and we have the problem here in America
Let her
today.
say, because we don't read. Expound
We
on
don't
that.
read, and we just, again, like a lot of Dunning-Kruger, and it's, we
Correct.
just assume that our experience is a universal experience, and our understanding of what the past was, which translates the same way for other people, but
Right.
that's simply not true.
Yes.
Right. And we don't pay attention to other people's feelings. And, there's also a great deal of anti-intellectualism that informs all of these things.
Yes, absolutely.
And it's sad, isn't it sad? Don't you find it to be sad? I mean,
I find it to be very sad.
You're
Right.
you're at an age
Yes.
where I have a child that was born in 86, so you could be my daughter. You certainly could be Joey's daughter.
Yes.
And we just find it incredibly, refreshing to know that your group and the group that you're teaching and informing in school might have a different outlook on this. And if we get to that point where you guys can influence the structure and the form of things, we might yet survive this.
Mm-hmm.
We're
Well-
distracted a minute by the lunar, all the stuff that we're doing with the moon, and that's terribly exciting on a science frontier.
Yeah.
But we got to eat here, and we got to, do the things that we need to do here.
Well, the only thing that separates us from the rest of this planet is our intellect. It's the only thing that really separates us. And from rocks and trees and animals, they all have energy. And
we're valuing it
You
less
can have
these
a
days.
metaphysical belief, but the problem is intellect. And the problem is we are not educated. And that is the problem. And even Thomas Jefferson, as entitled and white as he may have been, said, this democracy will only work with an informed citizenry.
I completely agree.
And
Yeah.
we do not have an informed citizenry any
By
longer.
design.
So that's a big problem. Let me ask you a question.
About
before
5 minutes left, Joey.
What do you teach when you're teaching Bollywood?
What do I teach when I'm teaching Bollywood?
Yeah.
I teach this class called Mumbai Bollywood. I have a lower level version and an upper level version. The lower level version starts with all my students saying, I don't know why I'm in this class, and ending up with, we're going to make a Batman movie that's set in Mumbai, and here are my sketches of the movie, right? What I teach in Mumbai and Bollywood is how the sense of place informs not just an industry in that place, but also the literature of that place. So whether we're reading literature about the marginalized communities, people oppressed by caste or class, or, Mumbai is also a very interesting multi-religious city. Though it's majority Hindu, there are many different groups of people, Jewish persons, Zoroastrian persons, Catholic and Protestant persons, and how they all work together or do not. And again, I give them the counter narrative through Bollywood, which is, again, very idealistic, very melodramatic, very colorful of what, particularly after the 90s, Bollywood cinema became so much for people outside of India. Bollywood shows, Americans or Americans in India or people the world over what Indians want them to see about India. And literature tells them what Indians don't want to hear about India. So I sort of dance between those two things. And I show a lot of interesting movies and we read some cool texts.
But isn't Bollywood always a product of colonial influence?
It kind
Even
of...
from the beginning, or no?
Not quite, because there is a long history of aesthetics and dance and drama, and Bollywood musicals are... They're almost always musicals. That has also started changing. And, we accept that form, which is also why my father, of course, was also into musicals.
Right.
Because this is a form that we understand.
Yes.
But, there are a lot of histories in Bollywood that come before, the introduction of technology that makes Bollywood possible. Stories, mythologies, and all of that. So I do touch upon a lot of those things in my class.
I would love to sit through a class, I think.
Can we be guests?
I
Can
would
we
love
be
to
guests?
sit through a class where I took a silent movie class in college and was a boy, and it was just astounding, as a young man. And I would love to sit in a class that would take me from Bollywood, the first moment, to where it is now, because I see it from the outside as an uninformed person, a lot of interesting stuff there.
Less than 90 seconds, Joey. I'm so sad that it's less than 90 seconds, but I will say this. If we invited you to come back, because I feel like we've just put the batter, the egg, the oil, we're about to start. We haven't even put the cake in the oven yet. We've just scratched a little bit of the story of your narrative. And I'm fascinated, quite honestly. And I would like to, now that we got to know you a little bit, Sucheta, I would like to bring you back so we could pepper you with some really valid questions, because now we know you. We feel like we know you. Is there anything that we didn't say that you'd like to say in 30 seconds or so?
In 30 seconds, I would like to say that I did a good deed, or rather, I did what I was supposed to do, and I was able to negotiate a contract to bring my father's play Jaya back. It's currently running in Mumbai. They have finished 28 shows. It's with the same director.
It's for you.
And, it was a very nourishing moment for me, which sort of is a nice way to sort of think about my relationship with my father. I also recently turned 40. So Jaya is also now running in Mumbai, and I hope to go there this summer and see it.
Maybe heal some trauma. Maybe
Bring us home, Joe.
Maybe heal some trauma, but I mean, it is a play about an apocalyptic war and tragedy and badly behaved men.
There you go.
Bring us home, Joey.
Yes, so we must close. Let me just say that thank you to Jessica G, ROG Board Op. She's doing a great job today. And also Gabrielle, our call taker. And coming up next is Sally, sitting in for Sam in It's the Music Wednesday.
Thank you, everybody, for listening. As always, thank you, Sucheta, for being with us today. We'll bring you back. We promise. You're listening to WMNF Tampa.